Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. A Heart of Ice and Ash. Episode 14. Chapter 136. Damien POV. Well, he seems nice, Elena commented from the cell, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He could have at least let us free. I roll my eyes. Langford is quiet, hard to read, a grim expression on his face as he regards us all. The other boy, or guard, Jared, is still staring at us all in disbelief, my twin having walked away now. Langdon, I say quietly, are you going to keep him as your mate? I ask tentatively. I won't blame him if he says yes. After all, it's relatively normal for twins and triplets to have the same mate, but it stings to think of sharing him with another person, even if that person is my brother. I scold myself for being jealous, especially right now. But I can't help it. After all, I've had Langdon to myself up until now. He hesitates for a moment. It's a weird situation, he says finally. I know it's a normal thing, but I find that I'm really attached to you and don't want to be shared, he admitted, but I also don't want to hurt your brother's feelings either, he says with a frown. I need time to think about it. That's fair, I say quietly. I turn to Mother, who looks pensive now, staring off into the distance, thinking about God knows what. Mother, any chance you want to explain how Drake ended up here? I ask sarcastically. She looks up. I frown. She genuinely looks mystified. At a complete loss, if I'm being honest with myself. Maybe she's been telling the truth this time. Either that, or she's a hell of a good actress. I suspect the latter. No idea, she says calmly. Too calmly. You're so lucky to have Drake as a brother, the stoner says. You can smell drifting off his clothes from the cell, and his eyes are so glazed over, I'm amazed he can see at all. Let alone carry on a conversation. Is that right, I say drily, although I'm curious about Drake. My twin looks so much harder than myself, like he's had a rough upbringing as well, and that tattoo, well, it's awesome. I'm considering getting one myself now. Yes, enthuses Jared, he's so nice even if he doesn't look it. Trust me, he'll do anything for his friends. Shame about his mother, he comments. He really hates her. Which is strange because everyone else loves her. I don't suppose you are willing to let us out, Langdon speaks out, moving forward but avoiding the bars. Jared looks apologetic. I promised I wouldn't, but Drake will be back soon, don't worry. He wouldn't lie to you, he assures us. We have to trust him. Elena sits on the ground and makes herself comfortable. Is there any chance of getting something to eat and drink? She asks politely. Of course, Jared says cheerfully. I'll get someone to bring some good stuff down. You like chocolate? He asks my mother, who looks horrified at the very idea. Why do I have the feeling he has the munchies? I fight back a grin as he almost races outside. Mother looks offended. He didn't even ask what I wanted, she says with a groan. He'll probably come back with junk food and soft drink. Well, it won't kill you, I tell her with a shrug. Be grateful he's fetching anything. He could just let us starve. I am grateful, she protests, but he's stoned, and I don't want lilies and chips. Tell him that when he gets back then, I say with a sigh. God, does she have to complain about everything? Why can't she just leave well enough alone? Langdon grabs hold of my arm and drags me into a corner. Leave your mother alone, he sighs. We have bigger fish to fry. I look around the cell and the dungeon. We're the only ones in there. What do you suggest we do? I ask mystified. We can't exactly break out of here, I point out wryly. He huffs impatiently. I know that, but it's not like we have a plan either, he points out impatiently. What do you think we should do when we get out? Save Winter, I snap, like it's going to be the easiest thing in the world. Even I wince when I speak those words, and I look at Langdon sheepishly. He merely rolls his eyes and folds his arms, arching an eyebrow at me. You know it's not going to be that easy, don't you? Well, what should we do? The Queen a siren according to Winter. How exactly do you fight someone like that? I snap with a shrug. Men can't fight against sirens. We're lucky she's only a half siren, but combined as a witch, we can still win. We just have to be cautious, Langdon says quietly. He looks determined. I'm just not as optimistic as him. Elena must have been listening because she turned her head and chuckled at the both of us. You men will be like putty at her fingertips, she chortled. Don't you see? The only people unaffected by sirens are women. You are both goners as soon as you see her. Drake is only immune because he's grown up with it. This whole plan was stupid to begin with. I turn on her angrily. Well, do you have any suggestions then, Mother? I spit out. Or are you just going to sit there and tear everything we think of down? Langdon grabs my arm. She said women are immune, he hisses, gesturing at a wide-eyed Elena, so she must be immune to her charms. Why don't we get her to take charge in a way? Be a vital part of the plan. No way, Elena says weakly. She'll kill me before I can do anything. You are still a shifter, I point out angrily, and it's your daughter she has. Don't you care, Mother, about Winter? She falls silent and goes pale. I stare triumphantly. She's feeling guilty, and rightly she should. Finally she slumps her shoulders and leans against the wall, muttering under her breath. Fine, tell me what to do, she says weakly. We sit down with her, facing the door. The door bursts open, startling us all as we jump in our skins. Jared comes in wheeling a trolley and smiling with a look of success on his face. I brought food and drink, he says, crowing proudly. I glance at the trolley and almost burst out laughing. As I'd predicted, he'd brought all sorts of sweets and chips, lollies, soft drink and water, thank God, not to mention a copious amount of chocolate. Langdon makes a strangled noise and my mother's mouth has dropped open in shock. Thank you, Jared, I say politely. That was really nice of you. He beams. He manages to hand everything through the bars as I pass the stuff out. My mother wrinkles her nose and accepts a bottle of water, but nothing else. Snob, I think with amusement. Jared is inhaling his own food. Drake says, eat up, you need your strength, he comments, placing a potato chip in his mouth and munching loudly as Mother winces in disgust. I grin. I can't help it. I like this kid. Even as a stoner, he's nice. What else did Drake say? I ask as he selects a jelly snake and opens his mouth, dropping it down into his throat with a slurping sound. He glances at me meaningfully. That at a certain time, I'm to unlock the cell door and then slip away, leaving you guys to your own devices. I inhale. Drake will keep his word then, I check, still awed by the fact I've seen my brother in person and that I didn't have to go on a personal quest to find him. Jared looks insulted now. Of course he'll keep his word. He would never back down from it. He's your brother, you should at least know that about him. Don't twins have a special bond or something, he says with annoyance. Twins most likely had a bond, but only when they grew up together, I thought with a pang of sadness, my chest feeling heavy. I would have loved to have grown up with a brother by my side, someone to have adventures with and get into mischief with, but it was not to be. Perhaps it was better that way, because at least he wouldn't have grown up with an alcoholic father, but would things have been different if he had been around? Would father have been more hesitant in regards to the abuse if he'd had two sons to stand up to him and say no? Life could have been so much more different. I blame him and my mother for everything that's occurred in my life up until now. Thank God for Langdon, who shows me love and affection every day, who guides me when I'm steering in the wrong direction, and who is there for me in every single way he can be. I wish I had a special bond, I whisper to Jared, whose eyes soften as he looks at me. Sorry man, he apologizes gruffly, didn't mean nothing by it. Heck, Drake is a brother to me, the only family I got. I guess I'm a little jello, he says sadly. You're a good brother to him, I say, watching the young man's face light up. I guess that makes us brothers too, I add, and he beams. His entire face is glowing. Really, he says, that's so cool. He yawns. I'm betting the effect, making him sleepy, which makes me nervous. We don't want him to fall asleep and forget to open the door to the cell. Mother, however, speaks up quietly, standing abruptly and making eye contact with Jared, who blinks at her bemused. I need the bathroom, she says hurriedly. You're going to have to hold it, Jared says awkwardly. I can't let you out, not yet anyway. She glares at him and then blushes to my surprise. What on earth is the woman up to now? I can't hold it, she argues. I see Jared glance over to the small bathroom in the corner. It's not far, but he's weighing up his options. After all, there is two men in the cell who are more powerful than him. My mother is beginning to bounce up and down on her toes, cheeks beet red. Please, she pleads softly. Jared looks awkward now, as he shakes his head. She doubles over and clutches at her stomach as though she's in agony. You don't understand, my mother says, beginning to shake and sob, her voice full of pain. I need the bathroom. I'm getting my period. Stunned silence. Jared's mouth drops open. Langdon and I glance at each other uncomfortably. Was there a reason she needed to blurt that out for everyone to hear? Nonetheless, my mother continues. I'm bleeding, I'm uncomfortable, and I need to use the facilities, she howls. Everyone is feeling awkward now, and Jared is completely speechless. I guess he's never had to handle a situation like this before. Jared is blushing profusely now, and he almost completely bowls over the food trolley, searching frantically for something as we watch quietly. He finally brandishes a key at us. Don't tell Drake, he babbles at us as we all nod, my mother clutching her stomach for all she's worth. He inserts the key into the lock as we stay back. Stay back, he advises Langdon and myself, and we press ourselves back against the wall. The key turns with a loud ominous creak, Jared pulling the door half open as my mother lets out a screech of pain. The tips of his ears are red. Sorry, he mumbles, letting my mother out. The bathroom is over there, he advises, pointing at it. My mother takes a step, then another towards the facilities. Jared starts to close the door again, and I tense, prepared to rush the poor guy, when my mother whirls around instead and hits him hard across the head. Langdon and I are incredulous as he drops to the floor with a loud thud, the eyes rolling to the back of his head. He's unconscious as she pulls the door open, hissing in pain from the silver, and we walk out. Langdon picks up Jared carefully and gently places him inside the cell, shutting the door and locking the young man inside. I feel a stab of remorse. I don't like that we're leaving him like that, but we have no choice. Drake would let him out, I was certain of it. Well done, mother, I congratulate her, and she just eyes me. See, I am good for something, she says harshly. Now let's go find that blasted Kai and your sister. She heads towards the exit, Langford and I in tow. Kai POV, I feel frustrated. Every time I try to go to Winter, Vanessa somehow makes me forget that's what I want to do, and I find myself doing her bidding instead. Lunch was spent at the table, learning about Drake, who seems to be slightly uncomfortable in his mother's presence. He certainly doesn't act like a loving son at any rate, but I could be reading him wrong. It's hard to say. My friend King Axel is also silent, staring down at his food, his eyes glazed over. He hasn't uttered a word, Vanessa instead doing the majority of the talking. The same thing happens at dinner, and I push my food around on my plate, not hungry, my stomach churning nervously as the sky begins to darken. My gut begins to cramp in response. Drake, too, looks out the window. He seems to be contemplating something, but it's hard to say what. The room is full of tension. It's almost time, Vanessa says in a husky voice, for the ritual. Winter will finally be free of her vampire side, she says, turning to me and staring deeply into my eyes. I feel my body becoming loose and relaxed, my mind free of everything but what she is telling me. Drake lets out a snort and she shoots him an angry glance. I know she didn't want him to come down here. She'd told him bluntly it wasn't the right time, but he'd showed no caring about that at all. He'd actually been quite snide about it, but Axel had been delighted to see him, much like a father seeing his son. It had been touching to see. At least someone seemed to care about the boy. It was a shame he hadn't ended up with a better mother. Vanessa glances outside with a gleam in her eyes. She turns to her husband, who blinks at her confused, an absent expression on his face. Axel, she says brusquely, go to our room. You are no good to me right now. You can't help with the ritual, she explains, a sly expression on her face. For a moment, there's a look of disappointment on Axel's face, but just as quickly it fades away as he stands up and bows to his wife, who watches him keenly. As you wish, my queen, he says monotonously. He turns and walks away with slow, steady footsteps, the sound fading into the distance. Drake watches him go with a brooding expression on his face. He looks upset on Axel's behalf. His mother merely raises an eyebrow at him. He stays silent. She smirks. I must fetch a few things from my chamber, she informs me haughtily as I listen, my feet not moving as my body remains still. Stay here with Drake while I do so. As you wish, I say automatically, and she smirks. Vanessa, or rather, Queen Vanessa, turns and glides out of the dining room, a look of concentration on her heavily made-up face. Drake gives her the finger behind her back, luckily she doesn't turn around and see it. Loving son, he is not coming across as. I turn to look at him, my head at least able to turn. I wonder if I should be anxious about that. Nah. I'm good. Drake frowns at me. Smack. He raises his hand and slaps me directly across the face, causing me to stumble backwards. Ouch, I snarl and he looks at me repentant. Well, sort of anyway. It quickly fades. Sorry, he whispers, but pain seems to be the only thing that breaks my mother's spell. You should be able to move now, he added. I move my foot experimentally and gasp. He's right, I can. I give him a sidelong look. Did you go to the dungeon? I hiss and he nods, his face pale. I did, and I met my brother Damien. He advises they are still in there, but I plan to leave in a minute and free them. You, on the other hand, he whispers frantically, need to do everything my mother tells you to. Not that you'll be able to do otherwise, the second she's back here, you'll be under her spell. Then why aren't you? I snap and he gives a bitter laugh. I guess because I've grown up with her. I'm immune. What is she? I ask anxiously. How does she have so much power over me? He looks incredulous, as though surprised I haven't worked it out yet. Now I feel stupid for no good reason. She's half siren, he whispers, checking the doorway. No man can resist her. Did you honestly think your friend chose her as mate, he says, and I still. Oh my God, no wonder, I murmur, feeling sick and somewhat angry as I stare at the boy. Why haven't you stopped her? I ask and he looks at me grimly. Because she's still my mother. Not to mention she would see it coming, it's no secret that I can't stand her, he adds. We hear the sounds of footsteps coming and he motions at me frantically to get back into the position I had been in when she left. I hurriedly oblige and she comes waltzing in, clutching several items to her chest which she hands over to a very apologetic-looking Drake. Drake, my dear, she purrs, would you do me a massive favor and take this out to my altar table outdoors, she says, grasping his arm and looking into his eyes, even as he tries to evade her. Kai and I have one more thing to grab before we can begin. You don't mind, do you? She asks. Drake's eyes meet mine and I know he's going to the dungeon now he's been given the opportunity. I give a discreet nod and he smiles a little at her. She visibly relaxes. Thank you, Vanessa tells Drake warmly as he gives a grunt and a nod, starting out of the room with his hands full of items. We'll see you out there, she adds with a grin. I eye her as he leaves. She seems so confident, so sure of herself. I can feel the siren part of her calling to me, doing my best to resist it, but it proves to be futile. My whole body seems to be floating again and I don't feel anything like myself. God, I'm useless, I think, annoyed as she runs her hand up my arm. Kai, my darling, she says sweetly, tingles spreading up my body. I think it's time to fetch Winter now, don't you? We need her, after all, for the ritual. I nod and she leads me out of the room and throughout the castle, until we reach the bedroom that Winter and I have been staying at. She pushes the door open and walks inside, gesturing for me to follow. My steps feel leaden as I come to the side of the bed, staring down at my mate with confusion. She lies there, snoring softly away, her body curled up in a fetal position. She looks so innocent and so vulnerable. I once again try to resist the spell, but cannot break its hold on me. Vanessa's eyes gleam with satisfaction as she eyes my mate on the bed, who appears not to be aware of either of our presences. Pick her up, Kai, but gently please, Vanessa instructs me in a husky voice, pointing down at Winter. I think sourly. My body moves to respond to her direction though, my arms scooping Winter up and holding her cradled to my chest. Her head lays back limply and her arms and legs swing back and forth in my grasp. Follow me, Vanessa says lightly, gleefully leaving the room. We head through a variety of winding corridors and out of the castle, heading southwards on the grounds. Something large and shimmery is in the distance, gleaming in the moonlight. I can't make it out, but it appears to be what she's aiming for, her body striding purposely towards it, smiling in the moonlight. Winter's body feels light in my arms, as light as a feather, her body cold against my bare skin. We continue in the direction and my eyes make out what the large item is. It's a large table of sorts, I suppose you could call it. But it was made of white stone or marble or something like that. Long and rectangular, it's the perfect size for a person to lie down upon. Vanessa nods as she spots the various items she'd given Drake piled haphazardly next to it. That boy, she swears. Glancing around with annoyance on her face, where on earth has he gotten to now? He never did have the stomach for my spells, she said with a derisive snort. She motions for me to put Winter down on the table. I gently place her down, her face staring up at the moonlit sky, her arms and legs by her sides. Vanessa leans down and retrieves something else I didn't see, and I blanch as she waves the chains around. Tie her to the table. Resist, I think to myself, but already I've grabbed the chains and wound them around her and the table. She pushes a padlock at me and I lock it, stepping back and looking at my mate gravely. Why does she resemble a sacrifice to me? It makes me nervous, but I still don't move towards her. The moon is high in the sky now, stars twinkling overhead. There was a slight chill to the air, and part of me wonders how it is that Vanessa is so unaffected by it, clad in a simple short black dress that clings firmly to her figure. She tests the chains and beams at me. Nice and tight, she approves. Well done, my soon-to-be king. I feel dread at that promise. I don't want to be her king. I just want to be Winter's mate, and even that was at risk right now, considering everything I've done. Why aren't I completely under her spell? Because my thoughts are my own, I notice with surprise. Is it because Drake slapped me? Or because I can't stop thinking about my mate in between Vanessa's talking? She begins to light some candles, placing them in a large circle around the table, the flames lighting on their own. Not only that, but they do not flicker or fizzle out despite the chilly air and brisk wind. They don't topple over either, standing firmly on the grass. She also makes me stand back so that I'm not inside the circle. Done, she mutters to herself, standing back and eyeing it critically. I dart my eyes around. Where was Drake? He had said he was going to the dungeon, so where was he? Surely it didn't take that long to free a few lousy prisoners? If he didn't hurry, this ritual was going to be done and dusted, and there was nothing I could do to prevent it. My body was refusing to move unless she told me to. A few more minutes, Vanessa said quietly, spreading out her arms and swaying back and forth, and then I will have what I desire most, she exclaims. Her gaze drops to Winter and she smirks. So much for being a powerful hybrid, Vanessa says snidely. She's the weakest one I've ever come across. She has all this power at her fingertips, she says unrepentantly, and doesn't use it. What a waste. She doesn't deserve it. She doesn't want it. So I'm going to take it, and so much more. I will finally have everything I finally wanted. What I deserve, she laughs quietly, as I stare at her in dismay. She sounds crazed, but then, wasn't she crazy? I couldn't keep up with the way her emotions kept changing so quickly. She bends down and grabs a chalice and a small dagger. Vanessa hands the chalice to me and my hand closes around it automatically, holding it steady in front of me. She aims the small dagger with a white crystal handle at her forearm and closes her eyes, preparing herself to draw blood, from what I can determine. Suddenly we hear a loud shout and my eyes fly open in relief. Get away from my daughter! We spent ages waiting for Vanessa to start her ritual thing, that poor boy Jared still locked up in that cell we left him in. We couldn't risk being caught in the castle and stuck to the grounds, spotting Winter being carried out and Kai carrying her once it became dark. Drake was annoyed, finding us and scolding us for not waiting, but he shut up when I glared at him. He did, however, leave us briefly to go and let Jared out of the cell, and I respect him for that. Clearly the two of them are close friends. He's loyal, a nice characteristic to have. We duck behind some bushes nearby, watching as Vanessa instructs Kai to place Winter down on the stone slab, restraining her with chains around the table. Kai is moving, but it's mechanical, his movements jerky as though he's trying to resist. It's the siren part of her mother whispers. Kai's clearly under her spell. Well day. Drake joins us. I cast a look at him. Have any of you thought of a plan? He asks rather desperately as we all shake our heads at him. Well, that's just great, he huffs. Langdon seems concerned, narrowing his eyes. She's about to draw blood, he murmurs. Now might be a good time to interrupt her. I open my mouth to answer, but Mother has already stood up and strode around, staring a startled Vanessa in the face as she shouts out loud, "Get away from my daughter!" So much for that, mutters Drake, getting up and walking around, Langdon and I following. Elena has given away that we've escaped from the dungeon, even if she didn't meant to, so there was no longer any point in hiding. I could kill her though, for losing control, even if it's out of fear for her daughter. Queen Vanessa is beautiful, her hair flowing in the wind. Her eyes are eerily bright as she smiles in welcome at us, the dagger slowly dropping to point at the ground. Well, isn't this a nice surprise? She trills, her voice lilting in the air. So many nice visitors, she adds. I frown. Why can't I move? I try to step away but can't. Judging by the looks on everyone's faces, including Elena's, they can't as well. Vanessa moves closer, her eyes narrowed on me in particular, a small smirk on her face. Well, Drake, how coincidence that your twin happens to be here as well, she scoffs, touching my face as I flinch. She grins. A few more steps and she stops directly in front of a frozen Drake, his eyes glaring at his mother angrily as she sighs and shakes her head, tsk-ing in disappointment. I expected more from you, my son. Where is the loyalty to your mother? She says sadly, a hand clutched to her chest. You're not my mother, he spits out. You've never been my mother. I'm just a trophy for you to parade around. You don't care about me, he growls. You just needed me to help you lure in certain men. Vanessa gives a large sigh and then turns to my mother, a sadistic smile on her face. Here is your so-called real mother, Vanessa drawls, as Elena tries to raise her hand to her. She catches it and digs her nails in, causing Elena to yelp in pain. Drake goes pale. His eyes are horrified. He glances over at me and I stare back, feeling just as helpless. It's been a long time, Elena, hasn't it? Vanessa continues and my mouth drops open. What did she just say? It wasn't my imagination, she just called my mother by her first name. Which means the two of them knew each other. Screw you, Vanessa, hisses Elena. She groans as Vanessa drops her arm. I can see nail indents on her from where I stand. There's also a slight bit of blood welling up. So rude, says Vanessa, annoyed, walking back to Kai and placing a hand on his chest as he stares at her like a love-struck puppy dog. After all I did for you, she snaps, as Elena rolls her eyes. What do you mean? I force out. Vanessa gives me a coy look. Did your mother not tell you how you were conceived? She asks wickedly. I'm confused. She laughs. Elena turns her head to face me. Don't listen to her, she pleads. I ignore my mother. Drake is also staring intently at her. Tell me, I growl. Vanessa shrugs. Well, your mother knew me when we both attended school together, she said with a disgusted glance at a distraught-looking Elena. We were friends, despite the fact I wasn't a shifter. When she met your father, she told me, raising her eyes, contempt on her face, she found out that she was unable to bear children. A rare oddity in a shifter, but it does happen, she says with a pitying look at me. So she came to me. Your father, it turns out, was desperate for an heir back then, and Elena was desperate to give him one. The timing worked out well. I willingly agreed to cast a spell on her in order for her to conceive, but with an ultimatum. You see, she sighed, I too wanted a son to love, to adore. My kind find it extremely difficult to bear children as well, and the spell would ensure she had twins. Myself and Drake, I uttered out, casting a scornful look at my mother. She'd lied to me, yet again. Why was I so surprised? Yes, said Vanessa sweetly, your mother had to give up one of you to me, and she did so without any qualms at all. Your father went along, because I gave them a substantial amount of money in return as well. Imagine my surprise when your mother came back, wanting a daughter to go along with the son she had. Very little time had passed at all, but she wanted to have the two of you close together, she explained. My eyes dart to mother. Langdon is calm, placid, even frozen as he is, feet stuck to the ground. I can tell he's taking everything in. Does that mean she had twins again? I ask, fearing the answer. Was there another Winter out there somewhere? Vanessa shook her head. No, it would have killed your mother if I had used the same spell. This time she would get one daughter only and be happy with that. Another spell would kill her. I did it for her, in good faith, and then she forgot about me like I never existed. Her tone was bitter, I noticed, like she'd been hurt by mother's lack of friendship. Elena was indignant. I was busy being beaten half to death, she snapped. Vanessa rolled her eyes. I told you to leave him, she hissed over and over again, but you didn't listen, and then you finally did, leaving your children behind. You're a disgraceful human being, she told her. I could agree with that. Even Drake was eyeing Elena with misgiving, and he barely knew her. Vanessa, I'm begging you, don't do this, Elena pleaded, looking down at Winter. You have a choice. Vanessa laughed. Her face was incredulous. You want me to stop this ritual? She asked with a laugh. You must be kidding. I don't care if she is your precious daughter, she has something that I want. Or rather, she has two things that I desire. Winter was so still, but her hair was slowly changing color in front of me. I blinked but was certain it was turning an extremely light blonde. Vanessa was so busy speaking, she wasn't noticing that at all. I kept my face blank, not wanting to draw attention to that. Something was clearly going on. I was praying it was for the good and that it might be a case of her waking up. Langdon too, cast a sideways glance before looking back up. He'd noticed as well. "What is it you want?" I asked rather desperately. Part of me was desperately hoping that Kai would get his act together, but he seemed to be blinking and glancing around like he was completely at a loss. I suppose, having been in Vanessa's presence longer, he was more susceptible to her wiles? Did it work that way? Vanessa turned to look at me, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. Her lips curved back. "What do I want?" she repeated with amusement. "Well, I want lots of things. But right now," she said delightedly, "I want the power that Winter possesses as a hybrid. Taking her vampire side will make me a trebrid, something that's not been done before. Then you'll leave her alone?" I check. No. She also has the baby she's conceived under my spell. I want that baby. It will be transferred into my own body to grow and develop. I've always wanted to experience pregnancy, and this is my chance to. I stare at her with hatred. She's so evil. Elena lets out a choking sound. Vanessa glances at her. "What's wrong, Elena? Are you upset about me killing your daughter?" "Because once I'm done, Winter will be nothing but an empty shell, and I'll be the most powerful species in existence. Not to mention, her mate will be my king and rule by my side. He's rather handsome, or I happen to think so anyway." "What about the king?" asked Langdon. "I plan on killing him too," Vanessa snarled, "a more boring shifter I have never met. I want his kingdom, not him. He will go, just as all of you will." Something was spreading on Winter's forearm. It looks like a mark of some description. Or tattoo. It's tribal and it's dark. It seems to shimmer for a moment and then stills. How curious. Elena is spitting vile curses at Vanessa, who is merely laughing as she walks back over to Kai and draws her arm back up, the dagger shining brightly as she tenses her arm and gets ready to pull it across and draw blood. With this, blood spits out Vanessa, dragging the dagger across her arm and causing blood to trickle. Kai hands her a goblet. "I will force Winter to drink it, mixed with some herbs," she added, bending and grabbing a small container, shaking it and trickling it in. "It will purge her vampire side out and it will come to me. It will be all mine." I try to force my body to propel forward. I'm shaking from trying so hard, and I can see the others doing the same, Drake in particular grunting and swearing as he tries. "Mother, don't!" Drake shouts as she stares at him. "Enough of this evil. Stop while you still can," he growls. She raises an eyebrow and shakes her head. "Sorry, Drake, but I know you. You've sided with my enemies and I can't forgive that. If it's any consolation to you," she says quietly, "I will make your death a painless one, I promise. You deserve that at least." He looks like he's been struck across the face before it hardens as he stares at his mother. She looks unrepentant. I grit my teeth and feel the tiniest bit of movement. Kai sways slightly on his feet. He's trying to move, I can sense it. Vanessa still remains oblivious, too busy gloating over what she's about to do. Winter's arm moves, twitches slightly. I see Vanessa move towards her, the goblet firmly held in both hands, the smell of the herbs disgusting and pungent, strong in the air as we gag. She stops and looks down at Winter, moving her head. Such a weakling. What a shame you didn't embrace it, she tells her. How does she not notice Winter's hair changed? She lifts the goblet up and prepares to put it to Winter's lips. To everyone's shock, Winter's arm swings up and grabs Vanessa's hand, gripping it tightly as the woman squealed, her eyes fluttering open. Think again, Winter snarls, her eyes glowing red. I'm going to kill you. Winter POV. I can hear voices above me, distant, like they are talking underwater, and it's frustrating. But the last bit is clear and my eyes flash open as I grasp Vanessa's arm, before she can spill any blood from the goblet into my lips, and tell her I'm going to kill you. I swing up and dart to the side, eyeing her with nothing but contempt. Everyone else is frozen. Vanessa seems to be in shock. How is it that you are immune to my spells? She croaks, dropping the goblet with a clang. I shrug. I actually don't know. What I do know is that I feel powerful, strong, like there's something pumping through my veins. I'm different, but I like this feeling. It's addicting. I feel like I can take on the world, but my main concern right now is she in front of me. She's going down and I'm going to be the one to do that. She flings a bolt of lightning at me and I move, the bolt hitting the tree with a loud hissing sound. The tree topples with a cracking noise. I glance around at everyone who appears to be helpless. Let them go, I tell her firmly. Your fight is with me. You really think I'm that stupid? She spits out, circling around us all, eyeing me warily. They'll attack me the second they are free. This time a fireball flies towards me and I duck in time. She smirks at me. Arrogant. I have plenty of tricks up my sleeve, she says arrogantly. I intend to have that power you possess, she cries, and that child of yours too. Like hell she will. I race towards her, but she sends a giant burst of wind towards me, causing me to fall back and hit another tree. This time the poor tree topples to the ground from the crash. Whoops! I feel a sharp pain in my side, but ignore it, focusing on her instead. I can't let down my guard. She's powerful, but I'm stronger. Winter, be careful, cries my mother in warning. She's eyeing me helplessly. I feel bad that they can't move. It's kind of annoying as well because Vanessa is using them as shields as she flings her power at me. Just give up already, snapped Vanessa, a fireball just missing me by an inch as it goes flying past. Never, I snarl, my fangs protruding from my mouth as I give her a fake and insincere smile. But you feel free to if you're scared. Her eyes glint at me. Kai, she says suddenly, turning to my mate, go and fight Winter for me. She's trying to hurt me, she purrs. My mouth drops open. Is this for real? Ooh, what a goddamn coward. How dare she use my mate against me? Wow, she's gotten desperate already. Hey! Sabriel, what do? We can't hurt our mate. We could outrun him? Knock him unconscious? Drain his blood and make him half vampire? No, none of those. We're going to have to try and keep him at bay while fighting Vanessa. Good luck with that. She is crazy. At this rate, she'll send all of them at you. I know. Let's do this. Well, if we die together. It was nice knowing you, Winter. Same, Sabriel. Kai gives a gigantic shudder and then begins to move towards me, his eyes pleading, his mouth in a tight line. I don't want to do this, he says, but my body won't listen to me. I know, I tell him bravely, I know. I move my head at him. Maybe Sabriel did have a good idea after all. Kai begins to get closer and I don't move, not until the very last second, where I use my vampire speed to get around him, effectively swinging my arm at the back of his head and hitting him as hard as possible. My hand connects with a crunching sound. Kai's mouth falls open and then I watch, sadly and regretfully, as my mate crashes to the ground, face down, completely and utterly knocked out. Vanessa gives a shriek of frustration. She stomps her foot as I chuckle, relishing her little tantrum. That didn't go to plan, did it? I taunt her. Winter POV. I can hear voices above me, distant, like they are talking underwater, and it's frustrating. But the last bit is clear and my eyes flash open as I grasp Vanessa's arm, before she can spill any blood from the goblet into my lips, and tell her I'm going to kill you. She narrows her eyes. I was laying bets that you were too nice to injure your mate, but I guess I was wrong about you. She snarls. So much for being sweet and innocent, she digs. I just laugh. Whoosh. Another fireball. I duck just in time and see that it comes dangerously close to Damien. Then I blink. That's not Damien. My eyes travel around and I see two Damiens. My eyes widen. Did he find his twin? Is that what I partially overheard? I get distracted, a fireball hitting my arm, and I curse as I swat at it, sending it fizzling out. It hurts. Hurts, does it? She mocks me. I flip her the finger. It does hurt. I glance around at the others. They are far too vulnerable out in the open like this while she flings fireballs. I'm putting them in danger, staying like this. They can't dodge or duck like I can. I stare at Vanessa, narrowing my eyes at her, jumping to the side as she screeches in frustration at another near miss. I hear the vampire voice. Give them blood to break the spell that comes from the siren part of her that paralyses her victims. Whose blood? Yours, silly. You aren't affected by her spell, are you? You're not very bright sometimes, are you? I'm choosing to ignore that. Hey! What do you know? While I dodge fireballs and the occasional lightning bolt, I use my fangs to pierce the skin of my wrist, causing blood to trickle down my wrist. I shoot to twin Damien first and trickle it into his mouth while Vanessa stares, not comprehending what I'm doing. I do the same to Elena and real Damien, as well as smear some into Kai's mouth. They all begin to move and Vanessa gives a shout. You, what have you done? Her tone extremely angry. I grin. Come and get me, I growl and shift, heading directly to the woods as she screeches indignantly. My paws thud across the ground, dodging trees, fallen branches, and debris, my tail wagging. The vampire side is ecstatic at how well everything is going. Everything seems so effortless. I can hear Vanessa behind me. For a witch, she's definitely fast, and finally I turn and shift back to the vampire part of me. She stops in her tracks. You're done, I shout out, my voice loudly echoing in the wind. You're nothing but a pathetic, who uses her powers to get men because you're too ugly for them to want you. How dare you, she screams. This time she sends dirt flying everywhere. I wince as small rocks hit me across the arms and chest. Never mind, they aren't doing much damage. My speed is overwhelming as I race towards her and grip her by the throat. She gasps as I raise my arm back and then send her flying into a tree, her back hitting it with a loud crunching noise, her body sliding to the floor. She screams, spitting out blood as she stands back up. That was for Kai, I blurt out. I know you put a spell on him. I know what you did. She barely gets an answer out when I'm holding her again. This time I reach my arm out and grip hers, breaking her arm as she flails wildly in my arms. I drop her and back away. I can heal that, she cries, and I watch her broken arm slowly mend itself. I know, I say slyly, but it wouldn't be much fun if you couldn't. She sends what looks like a small tornado at me. I get stuck in it, cursing, wind rushing around me as it lifts me high up into the air. I brace myself. She lets me drop. I fall to the floor, on my back, my bones healing instantly. Nice one, I congratulate her, malice dripping from my voice, but now it's my turn. Let's see you heal this, I snarl and move. This time I get behind her and wrench one of her AMs behind her back. Before she can utter a spell or a word, I wrench her arm out and rip it completely from her body as she screams. I fling it away and walk back around to face her, blood spouting out everywhere. She uses her other arm to cauterize it. Even witches can't regrow limbs, I think with contempt. I almost want to spit in her face. That was for Damien, I tell her, moving my head and looking pointedly at her legs as she turns and tries to stumble away. Where are you going? I call out. She looks back, absolutely terrified. Her so-called plan, or ritual that was to happen tonight, had completely backfired on her. I'd also ripped off her right arm, knowing it was the stronger one that she used to conduct spells. Her left one would be weaker, and so would the spells she tried. I also suspected that one-armed, her siren side would be dormant or extremely weak as well. I start to skip. She's unbalanced with one arm, struggling to move away. She definitely can't run. This feels like fun. The vampire side of me is gloating now. I move and get in front of her, forcing her to halt in her tracks. She weakly holds up her arm and sends a fireball at me. It fizzles before it even touches me. I grin, showing her my fangs. I'm hungry now, I purr. I can hear your blood pumping through your veins, the heavy breathing, your heart thumping. It sounds so delicious, I continue as she blanches. Don't, she tries, but I just tisk and step closer. I grab her by the throat, and force her head to go to the side, exposing the creamy side of her neck. My fangs pierce her skin as her body jolts, her other arm weakly trying to push me away. She tastes sweet with a hint of bitterness as I begin to drain her, sucking greedily at her blood. My mouth is watering. I feel rejuvenated, energetic as the blood continues to slide down my throat. It's so smooth and fresh. So delicious. It's sweet, tantalizing. I feel triumphant. I've won and conquered her. She no longer poses a threat to me. I'm careful though, not wanting to take too much, at least not yet. She has to suffer, for everything she's done. I still remember the helpless feeling of having to take the drug she gave me so she wouldn't kill Kai. I stop and pause, her skin is pale and her face is ashen. She's close to passing out but not yet. My other hand reaches up, clawing away at her midsection and chest. She gurgles, as the blood drips down onto the forest floor and seeps into the dirt, staining it red, as I stare in satisfaction. For a minute, I feel pity for her, but it fades. I also hear voices in the background and know that Damien and the others are coming. I stiffen, however, as I hear the footsteps of someone else coming. Christ, did I not hit him hard enough? I was sure he'd be unconscious for ages yet. But it's him, and I turn to face him, holding a very still Vanessa in my grasp. He halts, no doubt stunned by my red glowing eyes or the smile that won't leave my face as I torture my victim. Whoa, Winter, Kai says, holding up his hands. Don't you think that you've done enough? He protests, looking slightly green as he looks at Vanessa. I shake my head. She hasn't suffered nearly enough. Not to my satisfaction at any rate. I want her to hurt more. I want her to die screaming. No, I tell him heatedly, she has to die. She's almost dead anyway, he argues, pointing at me. We begin to argue while I forget what I'm doing. A rock, a large one, suddenly rises from the ground while I stare in disbelief. I throw myself forward, but it's much too late, the rock hitting Kai across the back of the head. He lands to the ground, the rock on top of him. It's bigger than his head. His skull looks slightly mushed. I give out a scream of rage, ripping off Vanessa's head and flinging it across the ground, letting her body drop to the floor. I run to Kai. I pull the rock of his head and examine him, panicking at the sight of blood and more. I desperately try to feel for a pulse, but to my anguish and despair, cannot find one. Kai, I scream, beginning to shake him as Damien and the others come into view. Kai, wake up. Winter POV. I wish I could say that I didn't remember the next few moments, or hours, but it's imprinted on my mind. Shouting and screaming for Kai to wake up, shaking him with my arms. I don't remember which one it was, either Damien or his twin Drake, confused in the moment as I screamed for my mate, taking hold of me, and dragging me back away from him as I flailed around and struggled against them. Let me go, I screamed. I need to go to Kai. He needs me. It finally hit me that it was Damien holding me back, his eyes staring down at me was that sympathy in his gaze? Why would I need his sympathy? Kai was all right, he just needed the hospital, I convinced myself. He needed medical attention, that was all. He would be fine, I tried to convince myself, but the words felt hollow. The other one, Drake, was looking down at the body of his mother with an unreadable expression on his face. She's definitely dead, he muttered, looking at my mother who was bending down to check Kai all over. What about him? My mother was checking for a pulse. I stilled, looking at her desperately, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. There's a tiny pulse, barely there, but it's there, my mother finally said, and Drake nodded. He moved towards Kai and firmly grasped him in his arms. The sight of blood hit me again and I blanched, the smell repugnant. I couldn't stand to see my mate hurt, and it was all my fault, I thought bitterly. Why hadn't I just killed Vanessa immediately instead of toying with her? I should have just been done with it. Instead I'd played with her and Kai had been hurt as a result. I was an fool. What had I done? Bile rises up in my throat, threatening to empty my stomach contents as I double over in grief. Damien's strong arms the only thing holding me up. I'm taking him to the hospital, announced Drake, and my other brother, the one tenderly holding me, gave him a small nod. He rushed off, my mother coming to my side, to my surprise, whereas Langdon, followed behind Drake, also heading to the hospital. I suppose as the beta, it's his duty to find out his alpha's condition. I struggle weakly in my brother's arms, all my strength suddenly zapped out. I killed him, I sob wildly. Kai's dead because of me, I scream out. Damien shakes his head. He's not dead. Mother found a pulse, he pointed out, and then glances behind me at the corpse still lying there. Vanessa is gone, thank goodness. You got rid of her. Winter, don't blame yourself for this. We tried to get Kai to hold back, but he was insistent on going to your side. That just hurt me inside even more. My mother pulls my hair back from my forehead. Sweetheart, she croons, this isn't your fault. Why don't you let Damien hold you and take you up to the hospital? I'm sure you could use a checking over as well, she adds pointedly. But my wounds are healed, one of the very many benefits to being half vampire and half shifter. We heal incredibly fast. Part of me wants to change Kai, it would heal him, make him better, but he can't consent to being a hybrid and I won't force that on him. One time he told me he didn't want to be one, apologizing to me, and I had to respect that, but by God, it was killing me inside and part of me wanted to be selfish and do it anyway. I was hoping the surgery would go through and that I wouldn't have to be tempted to do just that. I let Damien swoop me into his arms, cradling me against his chest. For what it's worth, I am sorry about Kai. But he'll pull through, Winter, he's a stubborn, you know that, he adds. I desperately want to believe him. Believe everything they are telling me, but there's something in their eyes as they glance away, something they aren't saying to me. He begins to walk and I cling to him, holding desperately onto his flesh which warms me on the outside. But it's the inside of me that's chilled to the bone, inside of me that hurts so much that I want to scream out all my pain and anguish. Winter POV. I wish I could say that I didn't remember the next few moments, or hours, but it's imprinted on my mind. Shouting and screaming for Kai to wake up, shaking him with my arms. I don't remember which one it was, either Damien or his twin Drake, confused in the moment as I screamed for my mate, taking hold of me, and dragging me back away from him as I flailed around and struggled against them. The hospital is busy, crowded and chaotic. We walk inside and a nurse spots us both, looking me over with a critical eye. Do you require assistance? She asks over the noise. Damien shakes his head. Actually, we're looking for a patient, would have just been brought in, Alpha Kai, he asks with a smile. The nurse almost swoons. He's in surgery at the moment, your friends are currently in the waiting room, she added, taking us down there. I'll come inform you when the surgery is over. I barely grasp anything she's saying. Damien sits me on a seat, my mother taking one on the other side of me. Langdon and Drake look at us with a grim expression. They're doing surgery on his brain, Winter. We don't know if he'll make it. I let out a cry, Damien's arms enfolding me. Drake looks at me sadly, but doesn't try to touch me. It's not the best circumstance to meet your sister, I guess. But I find myself reaching out a hand to him. He hesitates but then takes it, giving it a gentle squeeze in sympathy. What are his chances? I ask thickly. He's an alpha, this can't be right. Don't alphas heal better than other wolves? What about Storm? Oh my God, I can't lose them, I can't, I think to myself. My mother tries to calm me. Winter, you need to breathe, honey. You're going to collapse at this rate. Just breathe. We won't know anything until the nurse comes back. My eyes fill with tears. Someone, God knows who, hands me a box of tissues which I gratefully accept, blowing my nose and wiping my tears. My whole body feels lightheaded. I think she should lie down. I hear Langdon say in genuine concern. She looks like she's going to pass out. She would have used a lot of energy up with that fight, he informs them. My mother moves. My brother hops off his seat and then gently pushes my unresisting body down over a few chairs, placing a jacket over me. Sleep, he murmurs as I let go of Drake's hand. We'll wake you when we hear something. I open my mouth to protest, but the tiredness overtakes me. The truth is I had expended a lot of energy, and right now, Sabriel was also going insane at the thought of our mate being injured and hurt. My eyes close of their own accord even though I try desperately to fight it, frightened that no one would wake me up with news. I drift, but not so deep that I can't overhear them talking around me. What is she going to do if he doesn't make it? How will she cope? Langdon. We'll be there for her. No matter what. She needs our love to pull her through. My mother. I feel so bad. I should have been able to fight. My mother is responsible for this. Well, not my real mother, but still. Drake, it's okay. Kai is a tough. He will pull through, I'm certain of it. Damien. But as the hours pass, the voices begin to change. I can hear snoring next to me and surmise that it must be Damien. Langdon, will Winter be okay? Drake. He sounds so concerned, like a brother even though we've just met. I don't know, Langdon answers stiffly. She's strong, brave, fearless at times, but to lose a mate, is to lose your entire world. Silence. Nothing but silence. He's hurting too, his voice sounds pained. His best friend was in surgery as well and his Luna was losing it at the moment. Hours pass. I feel my strength returning, my eyes beginning to flutter open. My mother reaches down and helps me to sit, gently patting me on the back. Do you want something to eat? She asks, pointing to a tray of sandwiches which must have been brought by one of the nurses. I consider it. My stomach is growling and churning. I don't want to eat, but going hungry isn't really going to help the situation either. I gingerly reach over and grab one, munching it absently, my eyes on the revolving doors. Still no news. I ask rather hopelessly. Surely that was a bad sign, wasn't it? No news. He's still in surgery, answers Langdon with a sigh, but they do keep coming to inform us, so that's something. King Axel is recovering. Turns out Vanessa tried to poison him before the ritual. He's out of critical condition but also anxious about Kai. I give a slow nod. The hospital is so depressing, being surrounded by all white, the walls just a glaring reminder of where you are and what you are doing. I've always hated them and now I've been stuck inside of one for almost, from the looks of it, 16 hours. I get up and go to the bathroom, letting myself have a small cry. I use the cold water to splash on my face and cool down some of the redness and the puffiness of my eyes. It's refreshing and I blink back further tears. Winter, our mate is hurt so bad. I know, Sabriel, it's my fault, it's not your fault. There's no blame here, child, just fear for our mate and his safety. I can't do anything to help him, Sabriel, and it hurts, I'm hurting too, my child, my heart feels as though it's bleeding. Oh my God, Winter, our mate Sabriel ends that sentence on a scream full of anguish and despair. I feel the most intense pain of my life in my chest and scream, dropping to the ground, one hand to my heart as it thumps wildly. My screams continue, the pain washing over me, again and again, my body curled up now in the fetal position, unable to move, only to feel the never-ending waves of pain. I can hear shouts outside the door, but it barely registers. It hurts so bad, and I find myself desperately clawing at my chest to make it stop, make whatever this intense pain is go away, blood trickling down to the floor. The more pain I feel, the more frenzied my clawing becomes. What is this pain? The door bursts open and several nurses file in, grabbing hold of my arms to prevent me from scratching and wounding myself any further. Doctor, get ready, a nurse shouts as my arms begin to flail around and my body begins to writhe from the pain. A man in a doctor's coat steps inside, carefully holding a syringe. My eyes widen. What are they doing? Couldn't they see that I was fine, that I didn't need help? My mate was the one that was needing the help, the assistance. Why weren't they with him? Then I see Mother's face and Langdon's as they look down at me, their faces pale and ashen. Winter, this is for your own good, all right, it will help take the pain away, the doctor murmurs. Pain? What did they know about pain? I was being slowly tortured, from the inside, unable to make sense of it all. All I could do was fight them in disbelief. Some part of me knew something was very wrong. A sharp prick as the syringe or needle goes into my arm, the nurses all panting heavily from the exertion of trying to hold back my limbs. I give a small hiss, glaring up at them all. The pain begins to slowly, ever so slowly, subside, my body becoming limp and boneless, the nurses letting go so that my arms and legs flop to the ground. It's taking effect, the doctor commented. Let's get a stretcher to put her on and get her to a hospital room. I feel myself being lifted up and placed on something hard and cold. My mother reaches out and holds my hand, walking beside me as my eyes blink in confusion, my vision becoming somewhat blurry. Winter, I'm so sorry, my mother whispers, her voice shaky and cracking. They did all they could, but in the end, there was just too much in the way of injuries and complications. I'm sorry to tell you. She pauses, her eyes brimming with tears as I wonder where everyone else is. I'm sorry to tell you, honey, that Kai didn't make it. That's what that pain was. Just like that, I learned that I had lost my mate and my whole world, my eyes shutting and my mind drifting off in a pleasant haze brought on by a sedative. Kai was gone forever and there was nothing I could do about it. I should have changed him when I had the chance, selfish or not. Kai POV drip, drip, drip. The sound is incessant, annoying, and I open my eyes, my mouth widening in shock as I scream at the fact that it's like I'm underwater, feeling the water on my body, but unable to tell which way is up or down because it's so dark. My arms flail around, my body moves every which way, in a frantic attempt to get some air, certain that I'll die if I don't get some oxygen into my lungs. It takes several minutes, before I calm down enough to notice that, despite the fact I'm underwater and floating around, I'm not drowning and my body doesn't appear to need air. What is going on? The last thing that I remember is something hard and heavy hitting me right on the head. Not winter, but a rock, branch, tree limb. All I know is it hit me hard, and fast, before I could dodge it. I remember Winter's frantic screams, over and over again, while I was unable to open my eyes, or do anything. She was so hysterical, it had killed me to listen. Someone had finally held her back, her touch suddenly gone, my body feeling so cold, like it would never be warm again. My heart suddenly skips a beat as a realization dawns on me. Have I died? My God, no, I couldn't have. But Storm is quiet, and no matter how hard I try to reach my wolf, there's no answer. I feel like there's a part of me missing, like Storm has been wrenched out of me. It's disquieting. But if I'm dead, then where am I? Is this hell? I hear a sudden sucking sound, and then without warning the water begins to slowly push down, until my body is lying there, a small puddle beneath me, feeling like I'm in quicksand. It's that hard to move myself into a sitting position. I rub my hand over my eyes and blink, but it's still dark, my eyesight seeming to be like a normal human being's, rather than as a shifter's, and I awkwardly get to my feet, stumbling slightly. My body is cold, shivering violently as I glance in every direction, but all there is an empty landscape, no grass, no trees, no clouds, no sky. Nothing but blackness all around me. Hello, I shout. Anyone there? No answer. I huff and contemplate my situation. In the end I decide to start walking, in a random direction, in the hopes I come across something, anything that will tell me where I am. I need to get back to Winter, she's waiting for me. I won't let her think I abandoned her. If I have to claw my way out of her, I will. My feet move with purpose, my stride never faltering. Hours pass and I begin to despair, thinking I really am in hell. Why else would it be so dark and so cold with nothing in sight? Just as I'm beginning to think of giving up, light appears up ahead. Like a strobe light from a play, in the distance. I squint at it and then begin to walk a little faster, feeling myself get a second wind. Whatever that light was, I wanted to know where it was coming from. I jog, lightly, and the closer I get, the more light there is, until I find myself blinking against what seems to be harsh sunlight, my hand over my eyes. I turn around in bewilderment, suddenly finding my feet are standing on ground and grass, blue sky overhead and millions of flowers spread across the ground for the eye to see. A lake is off to the side and a swing hanging from a tree. Wait! Is that a person on the swing? I walk slowly towards the small dainty figure, her features coming into focus as I approach, her hair silvery in the sunlight, her skin pale, her eyes the clearest and brightest blue. There's a knowing look on her face as she halts the swing, her bare feet barely touching the floor. I gulp. She doesn't appear to be a human, but rather something else, emitting a dangerous and powerful aura. I stop where I am as she slowly gets to her feet and then glares at me, as though personally affronted by something I've done to her. Kai POV drip, drip, drip. The sound is incessant, annoying, and I open my eyes, my mouth widening in shock as I scream at the fact that it's like I'm underwater, feeling the water on my body, but unable to tell which way is up or down because it's so dark. My arms flail around, my body moves every which way, in a frantic attempt to get some air, certain that I'll die if I don't get some oxygen into my lungs. It takes several minutes, before I calm down enough to notice that, despite the fact I'm underwater and floating around, I'm not drowning and my body doesn't appear to need air. What is going on? You, she shouts incensed as I jump and then stare. How dare you? She has to be talking to me, right? I glance around but there's no one there. Yep, just me. She strides right up to me and points her finger in my chest, breathing rapidly in her anger. You, she howls. Now that's a bit much. I don't even know this woman but she shoots me such a scathing look, that I wisely decide to keep my mouth shut. It's not your time. You, she splutters, hands now on her hips, are not meant to be here. You are meant to be with her, she exclaims with a snarl. You nincompoop, she growls. My mouth falls open as she turns and storms away, glancing over her shoulder, shouting at me, follow me, dumbass. I follow. It's not like I know where I am, but what is this woman's problem? She finally stops at the foot of the lake, where I now notice a big black, familiar, wolf, resting under the tree. Storm, I cry and go to walk towards him when she flings her arm out and prevents me. Stop, he's resting right now. You will not ruin his recovery, she snorts, or I'll kill you. I notice a small vial next to Storm, shimmering with red blood. It's so bright in the sunlight and I feel myself drawn to it, like it's beckoning me. Can you tell me where I am? I snap at the woman, angry now. Don't get rude with me, she says and then relaxes, gesturing around her. This is the space between, she murmurs, biting her lip, where all people go before they die. I really don't like the sound of that. Am I dead? I ask. Who are you? She looks offended. Haven't you figured that out? I'm the moon goddess, she says icily, and I am none too happy with you, Alpha Chi. I gulp. The moon goddess is pissed at me. Really pissed. If looks could kill, I'd be nothing but ashes in the wind by now. I'm sorry, I apologize, not knowing what else to do. She sighs. You fool. How could you let down your guard like that and let yourself be hit? She demanded. I didn't want Winter to go so far, she'd hate herself. I thought that Vanessa was weakened. I was stupid, I know that, I tell her firmly. Well, it was a dumb thing to do, she grumbles. Now I have to do something about you. Oh. Like what? I ask her nervously, trying not to give rise to my panic. Well, I can either let you die, or I can offer you something to keep you alive, she said quietly, but it requires a sacrifice, as all things do. The thing is, you've not done the greatest job at being a mate to Winter, she points out, seething, and I would require you to do much, much better. I could beg you not to end my life, but in the end the decision is up to you, I say evenly, my heart hammering in my chest. But I will say this. I know I've been crap to Winter, my God, I feel like the worst human being in the world sometimes. I hate myself at times. But I have never stopped loving her. She's my everything. The reason that I want to keep going every day, when part of me wants to just sink into a depression that's hard to get out of. She's the reason I've found a reason to smile again. She's taught me what love, real love, feels like. She's shown me what it's like to be affectionate and what it's like to crave a person so badly, you'll go to any lengths to do what they want or need. Winter is my reason for living, she makes me stronger and more compassionate as a human being. I've changed, maybe not enough, but some, and I don't want Winter to ever think that I left her, or stopped caring. If you kill me, then all I ask is that you give her a mate that loves and adores her as much as I do, and who shows her the love that she deserves." I see a slight smile of encouragement on the moon goddess's face. But it doesn't matter, because all I can see in my mind's eye is my precious Winter. I feel a pang at the thought that I may have to leave her, but if she can find some happiness with another person, then I can find some small consolation in that. My heart is breaking and all I feel is agony, stuck in the depths of my own despair. If I'm honest with myself, I don't want Winter to find someone else. No one is going to love her like I do, no one will understand her like I do. I stare straight at a quiet and serious moon goddess. I take it back, I state, my eyes turning black. Winter is my mate and will stay my mate. No one loves her like I do. No one cares for her like I do. She's always been mine and she always will be, I declare, my heart skipping a beat. The moon goddess is silent, awed in fact. "That's all very well, but are you willing to make a sacrifice?" she says with a sidelong glance. "Name it, I'll make whatever sacrifice I have to," I growl. "Anything, if it means going back to her." She nods, pleased. She takes my hand and shivers run up my spine as I feel the full magnitude of her power, tugging me over to where Storm rests and the vial sits, glinting in the sunlight. "Blood," she says, pointing to it. To be specific, it's Winter's blood. "You drank some earlier but not enough for the transition to take place." I frown. Transition? Into what? Horror then shock. She means into a hybrid. I glance back down at the vial, my heart hammering now. I have a feeling I know what the sacrifice is. The moon goddess bends down, her white dress sweeping across the grass, and grabs a hold of the vial, ignoring the sleeping Storm. She balances it on the palm of her hand. "If you drink this, you will live," she says softly, "but you will also become a hybrid, like Winter is. Unlike her, the transition will happen immediately and without any hiccups. A pause, you'll be able to control your urges, but you will need to feed every so often as Winter does. You'll be exactly like her and Kai," she says sternly. "There is no cure. Witches cannot take the vampire part out of you or Winter. Are you willing to go through with this? To live as a hybrid? Or shall Winter find love with another mate?" There's no malice in her tone, but I stiffen at the mention of Winter and another mate. I regard the vial silently and reach out to take it. The glass is smooth, cold, tiny in the grip of my own hand. She waits, her eyes wide, for me to do it, and without a word, I open the stopper and drink it down in one quick rush, the blood sweet and tart. I drop the vial to the ground with a clatter. "You love her, don't you?" said the moon goddess with approval. "And she loves you." I can hear the grief and the pain she's emitting from thinking she's lost you forever. She needs you, Kai, and you need her. Start showing her how much, because she needs it. It's not enough to speak it. Actions sometimes can speak louder than words," she said. I watch her bend down to pat Storm. She stands up and then glares. "Well," she says with a flourish of her hands, "hurry up and wake up already," she snaps. I feel myself start to fall, and then, gasping for air, I sit upright, a hand to my chest, blinking at the bright light as I suddenly come to in a part of the hospital I never would have imagined. The moon goddess had a lot to answer for, I thought a bit acidly, or she had a wicked sense of humor, because I'd woken up in none other than the morgue. I blink and then hear the sound of a scream, a woman running towards the door, as though her life depends on it. Great, I think sardonically, this was going to be a little difficult to explain and all I want is to see Winter. Thanks a lot moon goddess. Winter POV so much pain. It's intense. I feel like I'm burning up. The last thing I remember is being sedated by hospital staff. I stare blankly up at the ceiling. He's gone. He has to be. That pain was him dying and I remember my mother's words, I'm sorry, he didn't make it. But how could Kai leave me like that? Abandon me? I thought he loved me. If he loved me, he wouldn't leave me to be all alone. I need him. Does he not know that? I can't live without him being by my side. I just can't. Grief overwhelms me. I hear footsteps and then my mother's blurry face appears above me. She gives me a smile but I ignore it. I feel her hand stroking my hair. Winter, honey, she murmurs, her own voice full of grief. I'm so sorry, she whispers. I turn my head, tears trailing down my eyes and onto the sheet. Maybe if I pretend, for just a little while, that Kai is still alive, the pain will go away. Hey Winter, says another voice and Damien comes into view, pulling a chair up beside the bed, gripping my hand tightly, squeezing it gently. I know you're upset and you don't have to talk, I just want to be here with you. If you need something tell me, and I'll get it, he adds. Damien always knows how to make me feel better. He knows right now that I don't want to talk. Because to talk right now, would just end in more tears. I swallow and give him a shaky smile, my body trembling on the bed. I wonder where Drake is or Langdon. Maybe they are together. Then I realize that Langdon would be full of grief as well. Kai was his alpha, as well as his best friend. He would need comforting as well. I curl up into a tighter fetal position. I hear my mother sigh as she strokes my hair. So young, she murmurs, the pain will fade eventually, Winter, but you can't give in to it and let it destroy you. It will kill you, if you let it. Let her grieve, my brother booms at her, shocking me and almost making me jump in fright. She can take time for that, mother. She loved Kai and he loved her. It wasn't like what you had with that man, he said in disgust. Mother's hand pauses. I never said it was, she said, hurt, just that I know how it feels to lose someone. Please, I think to myself, please don't fight in front of me right now. I can't take it. I don't want to be stuck in the middle between them. Not right now. I don't have the energy for it, let alone the inclination to stop them. My brother makes a grunting noise, but thankfully lets it go. Mother goes back to stroking my hair. Do you want a water or something, sweetheart? She offers. I shake my head. Food and water is the least of my concerns right now. Or blood. I wonder where Sabriel is, but she's silent, grieving her way, or at least that's what I'm hoping. Damien eyes me carefully but says nothing, leaning back in the chair, my hand still held tightly in his. God, I hope he never lets it go, it's a small comfort to me. Then it bursts out of me, in a fury. This is my fault. It's my fault that Kai's dead, I shriek out loud, curling up tighter. I should have stopped, I should have killed her straight away. Kai would be alive if it wasn't for me, I sob. I killed him, my god, I killed him. You didn't, Damien tells me gruffly, moving to kneel in front of my watery eyes. Winter, he should have stayed on his guard more. He put himself in danger. You're not responsible for his death. Blaming yourself is only going to make it worse. Trust me, you didn't do it. I don't believe him. Damien is just saying it in an attempt to make me feel better. It's nice of him, but it fails to placate me. My mother continues stroking my hair, as though that's all she can think of to do. Langdon must hate me, I murmur. I don't blame him if he does. I killed his best friend. My voice catches as I begin to cry even harder. Langdon doesn't hate you, Damien said softly. Winter, please stop, he pleads. Stop with the self-blaming and hatred. It's not going to help. You need to be strong right now. All right. Sabriel needs you too. She must be hurting something fierce. Both of you need to help each other. My tears slowly start to subside. But they don't fully stop. They'll probably never stop. But what do I do now, Damien? I whisper, staring at him, my mother listening but not speaking. What am I supposed to do without him there? He sighs. You start by grieving, Winter, like any normal person. Then eventually, you start to put your life back together, one step at a time. You're not alone, he points out. You have me. You have Mother. I swear that was sarcasm in his voice when he said that. You have Drake and you have Langdon for starters. Where is Kai? I ask, sniffling. I want to see him. Silence. Damien looks as though he's debating what to say. His jaw tightens and he glances up at Mother, who seems to have gone pale and ashen. Where is he? I burst out, frantic, sitting upright as Damien catches me. Which room? I'm heedless of my actions now, wanting to go to my mate, not even thinking straight. Hang on, Winter, Damien says, as I try to get up. You can't go down there. I stare at him confused. Go down where? I say impatiently. He glances away. You can't go down to the morgue, he finally utters. It's not allowed, Winter. The morgue. They had put my beloved Kai in the morgue. My whole body shakes. I had thought maybe he would be in a hospital room, not thinking logically. I pale, and look at my brother, feeling sick to my stomach. My mother sees it and grabs a wastebasket just in time, putting it to my mouth as I vomit up my stomach contents. Not that there's much. My shoulders heave as I clutch at the wastebasket like a lifesaver. My brother looks green. He's never really had a stomach for someone being sick. But he valiantly stays where he is. Mother pushes my hair back so that I don't get vomit in my hair. I'm sorry, I mutter miserably. I didn't realize that they would have. I trail off. It's okay, Damien says quietly. Maybe we can ask about going down there later. Mother glares at him. He raises an eyebrow at her. I try to rally myself. Kai would want me to be strong, I think to myself. He would want me to pull myself together. But my face crumples anyway. My heart hurts, my chest hurts. My whole being hurts. Part of me wants to beg for sedation again, so that I don't have to feel, or I can just be numb. But then I would just want it for longer and longer. It's dangerous to be numb, because then it's harder to feel. There's a commotion and several nurses and security staff running through the corridors. Damien frowns, looking concerned. He glances at Mother. I'm going to go see what's going on, he says gently. Mother, stay here with Winter and neither of you leave this room, he adds firmly. Mother opens her mouth to protest but then shuts her mouth. There's a look in my brother's eyes that say do not mess with me. She takes the hint and moves closer to me, Damien going out of the room and jogging in the direction of all the noise. What do you suppose is going on? I ask weakly, Mother taking the wastebasket and moving it away from me. Thankfully, the smell was getting to me. Who knows, she shrugs, probably a difficult patient needing to be held down or something. I'm sure it's nothing dangerous, she adds, seeing the look in my eyes. I just nod and stare at the ground. The commotion gets louder. Several screams and shouts. Mother begins to look worried. Maybe I should at least close the curtains, she begins to mutter. Right. That makes sense. Curtains will definitely derail a crazy patient, I want to shout at her in disbelief. Stop, I hear Damien's voice shouting. Then a bunch of people yelling. Your brother for getting involved, Mother snaps. He should have stayed out of it. What if he gets hurt? I say nothing. Damien can more than take care of himself. Even if Mother hasn't realized that yet. I wipe my mouth with the back of my hand. Then wince. I hop off the bed on shaky legs. I'm going to go rinse out my mouth, I mutter, heading towards the bathroom connected to the room I'm in. Mother nods, looking grim. She looks nervous. But the commotion seems to have died down and I assume it was to do with a patient being difficult. Otherwise I'm sure we would have been told otherwise by the nurses. I stagger into the bathroom and turn the faucet on, dipping my hands under the water and cupping them, splashing my face. It's refreshing and it helps to wake me up some, as well as dry my tears. I cup my hands again and this time thirstily drink. I pat my hair a little. I barely recognize the girl in the mirror. My hair is different, a light shade of blonde that's almost white. My eyes are brighter, my skin is paler. Any other time I would have thought I was beautiful. But at the moment, all I could think was that it was strange to look this way, instead of a mess like I'm feeling. The vamp side of me detracted from looking like a slob. It was sad. I swore I heard footsteps. But then I hear Mother's voice, sounding slightly strangled. Winter, she calls, can you come out please? There's she pauses, slightly hysterical, someone here to see you. I don't want to see anyone else. I scowl at the mirror. Part of me itches to break it, hurt myself in a way, but I just clench my hands into a fist and then release it with a loud whoosh. Coming, I call, opening the door and then shutting it with a loud crash. No, it can't be. My eyes are deceiving me. Either that or I've been dreaming this whole time, because of the sedative. Because I can't possibly be seeing this. But it's so real, so lifelike. My mouth drops open, my eyes widen. My mother is there, pale, a hand to her mouth. Is she seeing this too? Was I hallucinating? But I so desperately want it to be true. My heart gives a pang. A shiver runs down my spine. My feet are stuck to the floor, refusing to move. Tears form back in the corner of my eyes. Can this really be? He stares back, his eyes red, looking over me anxiously. I swallow, hard, feeling a lump in my throat. Then, without warning, my feet move, and I race towards him, flinging myself into his strong arms, my arms curling around his neck as I sob into his shoulder. It's him. It's really him. His hands grip me tight, holding me close to him. For a moment nothing is said, Sabriel exploding to life in my mind. She begins to howl, in happiness, the sound filling my mind. Is it really you? I whisper, sobbing. It's me. Kai answers. I'm back, Winter, and I'm never leaving you alone again. Do you hear me? He demands. Never again. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.